This is an intro, but it's going to be a little longer than normal. I was reading the news earlier and I came across this article with this picture and I thought, oh, wow. I mean, can you look at that picture for a minute? Doesn't it look like he's simply a petulant child throwing a friggin' hissy fit in the middle of Walmart, and you know that you have to grab him by the back of the neck and push him out of that store as he's kicking and screaming all at the same time. But I mean, if you look at it, I was kind of looking at his stance and his facial expression, and I thought, he looks like a couple of different things. He looks like he's thinking to himself, I'm really pissed off. I can't believe Joe Biden's going to get my bedroom. Or he could look like he's looking for that intern that they had to employ to handwrite cue cards because the monitors can't keep up with how much he's going to change and how much he's going to ad-lib and what notoriously stupid things he's going to say off script. So he's probably looking for the intern, like, you know, kneeling on the floor with the dollar store poster board and Sharpies waiting to see what the kid's going to write next. But he's going to be like, yeah, screw it, I'm going to say what I want. Or he's simply just trying to suck the hamburger fat out of his teeth after his Big Mac lunch. With all the cheeseburgers he eats, you know he's got to be dealing with that quite a bit. But what a picture. Hi BookTube, it's Kim at middle of the book march. So if you noticed my picture in my intro, I mean, if you got this far, how could you not have noticed? Sometimes I wonder, is the media titling these articles that way and using a picture from 2 years ago, or was that picture from yesterday to make him look worse than he does? And when I said that to myself, I started internally laughing. It's probably from a couple hours ago. Anyway, to get off the political bandwagon, yes, here in the US, I'm still dealing with political anxiety. I can't escape it, can't help it. We're going to try to talk about books and move on from there. This is the self-aware reader tag. I'm looking down at my laptop over in this area, and this was created and I was tagged by Courtney Ferreter. I love Courtney. She's an excellent booktuber. She brings great books to her videos. I love her vlogs. She's a college professor. She's incredibly intelligent, articulate, and she's quite funny. You have to be super smart to be that funny. That's my opinion on things. So she created the self-aware reader tag and tagged me. And this is a really good one. So let's get going. I think there's like 8 or 9 prompts. The first one is what most draws you into a novel or story and makes you want to keep reading. Plot, characters, writing style, atmosphere, or something else. You know, the default answer is they all do, but there's always something with fiction readers especially that pulls you to a certain book or a certain author or a certain type of book. My particular likes go in this order: writing style, character, plot, and atmosphere. So this book, any book I pick up has to be well written. It has to be well done. There has to be some sense of style or formatting or grammar. I have to be able to tell that this wasn't just a writer's mistake, that it wasn't just an editor trying to get a book out fast. If it is, I'm gonna chuck it. And I will do that very quickly. Certain books I've DNF'd at page 30. I'm not like Sean, and I don't DNF at page 1. There are times I've been tempted, and maybe I should have, but I usually can tell within 10 to 20 pages that this is not going to be a book I'm going to enjoy. But these books are, and one of the ones with a really unique writing style that is exceptionally well written. The characterization, in my opinion, is simply incredible. The amount of detail, the development of the characters, and also there was quite a bit of atmosphere in Girl, Woman, Other. I could feel like I was there. There's a lot of different characters, interlinked chapters and sections, talking about the lives of Black women or other people, other genders, other sexualities. Most of the stories are from Black women. But this was especially well done. I love Bernardine Evaristo's style. Loved it. One of the strongest books for characterization, however you feel about the book or not, is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I always struggle with that. One of the worst covers in book history. I hate it. But this is an exceptionally long book, but the characterization is exceptional. And I gave it 5 stars. It's not a perfect book for me. It's not a perfectly written book, but I loved the characters. I loved how the story went. I loved the growth, and loved it. The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock surprised me. 5-star fiction. The atmosphere was incredible. It's a book about a mermaid, but it's far more about relationships and commentary than it is about a Disney mermaid. So, yeah. Number 2. What is a convention or trope that will immediately turn you off in your reading experience with a novel or story? I love fiction by Southern American authors, but if you write a book with a bunch of Southern cliches in it or similes, I'm gonna rip the book apart. And I started a book last year, maybe the beginning of this year, that I couldn't stand after 75 pages, because the phrase "as far as the crow flies" appeared 3 times in 75 pages. And that particular novel, the author name-dropped a lot of actual living famous authors who, come to find out, he is in the same circle of, and I thought that was just really low-class, gaudy, and I hated his story, so I hated that book. I hate cliches, I hate stereotypes, I hate similes. As Far as the Crow Flies is one of my biggest pet peeves. If I ever see that or read that again in another historical Southern novel, I'm probably not going to finish that book. Number 3, what most appeals to you when reading nonfiction and makes you want to keep reading? I love narrative nonfiction. I love when nonfiction is exploring matters of the heart, the soul, emotions, people's stories. And I pulled out quickly 3 books that I really think I really enjoyed for all those reasons. Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann, The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI. This was a story of the very beginnings of the FBI with J. Edgar Hoover and the Osage Native American tribes who were consistently and slowly killed off in order for white Americans to gain their land, which was rich in oil. Exceptional story and exceptional character development. Even though it's nonfiction, Grann really brought these people alive on the page, even though it's a nonfiction book. This was one of my favorite books of the year, and I think it might be my favorite January read. It's Seabiscuit by Laura Hillenbrand. This is a book about horse racing. This is a book about a horse named Seabiscuit. There was so much heart and soul in this book. Her writing was incredible. It brought me into the story. I don't like horse racing. I hate racing animals, for love of animals purposes. I can't say enough how surprised I was by this nonfiction book about a horse and how much I loved it, and maybe a few tears came to my eyes. These Truths, which I've been reading by Jill Lepore, is one of the best history books I've ever read. Her writing style is so accessible. She gives so much information and explanation as to why and how and when things happened, what were the cultural implications, all of it, political implications, things I've never read, never been taught, never learned. It's an exceptional history book. Number 4, what is a convention or trope in nonfiction that will turn you off in your reading experience? If there's too much of the author's point of view in a nonfiction book, it will completely turn me off. And one of the worst I've read was earlier this year, and it was a book called Hurry Down Sunshine, and I don't have the author's name in front of me. I'll put a picture here. He was writing about his daughter's severe mental illness, and she had been hospitalized many times until they were able to figure out her diagnosis, what was going on, how do we help her and support her in coping with this, what is her medical plan. But he had so much information about himself, about his career, about his writing. He and his wife got divorced, but they still cared for their daughter as co-parents. He sounded very much like a very self-involved, narcissistic guy who was taking advantage of his daughter's story in order to get him some more exposure. Couldn't stand that book. So too much author perspective in a nonfiction is going to turn me right off. Number 5, would you say you read more for pleasure and enjoyment or more to learn and exercise your brain? Courtney, it's all of it. It's all of it. However, having a hard time with this because pleasure and enjoyment, when you say that to me about a novel, I'm thinking something fun. I'm thinking romance or something like a quick read, like a fast-paced thriller or something that's pure, give me the plot, and this is so good I can't put it down kind of a book. But then to learn and exercise my brain, quite often I immediately default to nonfiction, which shouldn't be the case. There's plenty of times I've read some pretty heavy-duty fiction that I've learned in enormous amounts from, not just information, not a data dump, but learned about myself, learned about emotions, learned empathy, learned about the world. Because I most often default towards fiction, I'm going to say mostly for pleasure and enjoyment, but typically for pretty heavy-duty stuff. Does that make sense? But I love it all, for real. Let's see. Number 6, which type of books are you likely to rate more highly and enjoy more overall? Brain candy for pleasure and enjoyment, or brain protein for learning and exercise? I believe any kind of reading is exercise your brain. I think Courtney would agree with me. It's a physical exercise. It builds up the brain tissue. It's a scientific, emotional exercise. It keeps everything, pulsing in there. It's good for our brains to read pretty much anything as long as we read a lot. Let's read a lot of cereal boxes, read a lot of newspapers, read a lot of postcards, whatever. Just keep reading. Read. So which type of books am I going to rate more highly? I will rate all types of books as long as they pass a certain criteria. A 5-star read for me is something that hits me it's a gut punch. It's an emotional tear. It's like the veil has been torn, the sun is shining down, I might have shed a tear. That's a 5-star read if the book is also written impeccably. So I'm going to show you, I have plenty of 5-star literary fiction reads, so many classics, so many wonderful books, but these are books that are not literary fiction, they're not nonfiction. These were books that, you could call them commercial fiction or light, or some of these are middle grade, but here they are. I rated all of these 5 stars. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society by Marianne Schaffer and Annie Barrows. I loved this story, loved everything about it, the characters, the plot, the wrap-up. The way it was written, it was epistolary. I laughed out loud many times. Absolutely loved it. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This is commercial fiction about a woman suspected of having an Asperger's disorder or autism disorder, possibly because of her social issues, her personality. Loved it. I loved the backstory. I loved Eleanor. I loved the characters. I loved the storyline. Loved it. 5 stars. These two are middle grade. The Hunger Games and the Hunger Games trilogy, I gave all of them a 5-star. I loved this book. This was like, don't blink, don't close my eyes, I can't put it down. And one of the best middle grade books of all time, in my opinion, is The Giver by Lois Lowry. I love that cover. But this is a 5-star read for me as well. And this is not literary fiction. This is, this is still, to this day, assigned as required reading in middle schools and some high schools. So let's see, we are on to prompt number 7. Do you have a sense early on of whether or not the book you're reading will be a 5-star read or a book you will really like? Has a book ever surprised you in this regard? I almost always know that a book is going to be a 5-star read pretty early on, but I've definitely been surprised. One of my favorite books of all time, and the reason of my channel name, is Middlemarch by George Eliot. I knew pretty early on that this was going to be and stay a 5-star read because it's a wicked long book, but that was a pretty obvious one. One that wasn't so obvious is this one. I already showed you this, The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock. 5 stars, but I picked this up thinking I was going to really enjoy reading it and have a lot of fun and enjoy the story. It was really well written. It's set in Victorian England, so it's a Victorian-ish novel, but I loved the story and I loved the whole theme and the point of it, the character development, all of it. It was a big surprise. Now, the other part of that question is, are you surprised? Has a book ever surprised you? Yes, and a book has also surprised me at how much junk I think it is on certain occasions when I've had such high expectations. One of them is Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things. I absolutely hate this book. I read it to the end. I could not stand it. I was so disappointed because there are so many lists out there and so many places where people are like, that's one of the best books I've ever read. I read it and I hated it. I think it's crap. And one of the biggest fiction disappointments of all time in my world is Margaret Atwood's The Testaments. The Handmaid's Tale I've read 3 times, is one of my favorite books. 5 stars every time. This one sucked. I couldn't believe what a huge disappointment this was, in my opinion. And it's an unnecessary piece of brick of a pile of paper is what it is. The last prompt: considering books that you've rated 5 stars in the past, or you don't rate them, then books you really loved, do you think you would feel the same way about them now? Why or why not? I typically do feel the same way. Once in a while I've scrolled through my Goodreads list and I'll look at, hey, what books did I rate as 5 stars? Do I think the same way? Or how, I'll land on one and I'm like, yeah, it sounds about right. This one I've changed, and there were a couple books, I don't remember the other couple, but there are a few books I actually went back and changed. I think it was only to give them higher ratings. This one is also by Arundhati Roy, and it is The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. I read this book a couple of years ago and gave it 3 stars. I really liked it, but it's very dense and confusing, and it's like Arundhati Roy is a political activist, and you can tell in her novels there's a lot to digest and unpack. But I have not stopped thinking about this book since I put it down a couple of years ago, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that affected me far deeper than I thought at the time. So I actually went back and just gave it 4 stars, because it's one of those books that I will probably reread, but I have not stopped thinking about it since I finished it. So yeah, those are all the prompts, 8 prompts, and the last one is to tag people. So let's see, I think Courtney just set up this tag, and I'm going to tag a few people, but I don't know if she already did. I'm tagging Alba from Seriella. I'm tagging Karen Evans. I am tagging Ange from Ange with an E. I'm tagging Gemma from Read a Book Gem. Who else? Sean. I'll tag you, Sean the Book Maniac, and see if you'll do this. Let me see, one more. Oh, Freddie at Sluggish Reader. I tag all of you, and I will list you all in the description box below. And that's it for this tag. Thanks a lot, Courtney, for tagging me. This was a lot of fun to think about. And anybody else who's watching, let me know what you think in the comment box below. Give me your opinions on any of the books, or tell me what your answers were to any of the prompts. Hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.